Well, this is a bit concerning. I don't remember falling asleep in a car, but here I am, surrounded by buttons that don't make sense, a dashboard that looks like it belongs in a spaceship, and I'm pretty sure that glowing panel is trying to tell me something, possibly in a language I don't speak. Either I've finally lost it, or I've just stepped into one of the strangest concept cars ever built. And honestly, it could be either one. Because today, we're looking at 5 of the weirdest American concept cars ever designed. Number 5, the 1961 Ford Gyron. Alright, let's start with something that feels less like a car and more like a science experiment. The Gyron didn't have 4 wheels. It didn't even have 3. It had 2, and not in the way you're thinking, not like a motorcycle. This was a fully enclosed 2-passenger car, balanced on just 2 wheels, one in the front and one in the back. Naturally, that raises a very important question. How does it not fall over? Well, Ford's answer was gyroscopes. The idea was that internal gyros would keep the car perfectly balanced even when stopped. In theory, it sounds brilliant. In reality, it was never actually made to work. The Gyron that Ford displayed in 1961 was a full-scale model, but it didn't have a functioning gyroscopic system. To keep it upright, it relied on hidden outrigger wheels. Still, the concept itself was serious. This was Ford exploring alternative transportation in an era obsessed with aviation and space-age technology. Inside, the car was just as unusual. Passengers sat side by side under a clear canopy, almost like a jet cockpit. No production version was ever planned. The Gyron existed purely to push boundaries. And it did exactly that, even if it couldn't stand on its own. Number 4. The 1958 Ford Nucleon. Now, if the Gyron felt experimental, this one feels slightly dangerous. Because instead of gasoline or electricity, Ford decided to explore something else entirely: nuclear power. Yes, the Nucleon was designed around the idea of a small nuclear reactor powering the car. This wasn't just a styling exercise. Ford engineers genuinely explored the concept of atomic energy for long-range transportation. The idea was simple, at least on paper. Instead of refueling, you would replace the reactor core at specialized stations similar to how aircraft engines were serviced. The design reflected that thinking. The passenger cabin was pushed forward, while the rear section was reserved for the reactor module. Of course, there were a few problems. Shielding a nuclear reactor inside a passenger vehicle wasn't exactly practical. Safety concerns alone were enough to stop development before it ever reached a working prototype. So the Nucleon never moved under its own power. What existed was a scale model. Still, it represents something fascinating. A time when car companies were willing to consider ideas that today sound completely unrealistic. But back then, felt like the future. Number 3. The 1969 Chevrolet Astro III. At this point, things stop feeling like cars entirely, because the Astro III looks like something that should be orbiting Earth, not sitting on it. Chevrolet designed this concept during the height of the space race, and it shows. The entire body was shaped like a jet fuselage. Long, narrow, and pointed. Instead of a conventional engine, the Astro III was imagined to use a gas turbine power plant. Turbine engines had been explored by multiple manufacturers during the 1960s as an alternative to piston engines. They were smooth, powerful, and mechanically simple, but not very efficient for everyday driving. The Astro III was never built as a fully functional car. It remained a concept model used to showcase design and engineering ideas. The cockpit-style interior reinforced the theme. Everything about it was designed to feel futuristic. But practicality wasn't part of the equation. Number 2. The 1956 GM Firebird II. Now this one takes a different approach. Instead of focusing on power, it focused on how cars would interact with the world around them. The Firebird II was designed as part of General Motors' vision for automated highways. It was powered by a gas turbine engine, continuing the industry's interest in alternative propulsion during the 1950s. But the real innovation was something else: guidance systems. GM imagined a future where cars wouldn't need to be driven manually. Instead, they would follow embedded electrical signals in specially designed highways. The Firebird II was built to demonstrate that idea. Its design reflected aviation influence, with a canopy-style cockpit and aircraft-inspired controls. Unlike some concepts, this one was fully functional. It could actually drive, but only under controlled conditions. The bigger vision, fully automated highways, never came to life the way GM imagined. Still, the idea of driver assistance and autonomous systems didn't disappear. It just evolved. Number 1. The 1964 Pontiac Banshee XP 833. Now, after everything we've seen, this one feels almost normal. Almost. Because the Banshee wasn't weird in the way it looked. It was weird because it shouldn't have existed at all. Pontiac developed the Banshee as a lightweight, affordable sports car meant to compete directly with European models. It featured a fiberglass body and was designed around small displacement engines, including a 6-cylinder and a V8 option. The car was fully functional. It drove. It performed well, and that's exactly why it became a problem. Inside General Motors, there was concern that the Banshee would compete too closely with the Corvette. So despite its potential, it was canceled. Only a small number of prototypes were built. And just like that, the project ended. The Banshee wasn't too strange for production. It was too good. And that might be the strangest thing of all. Concept cars are often dismissed as unrealistic, too experimental, too disconnected from reality. But looking back at these designs, something becomes clear. They weren't trying to predict the future perfectly. They were trying to explore it. Some ideas failed immediately. Others quietly influenced the cars we drive today. And a few, like the ones we just looked at, exist as reminders of a time when car companies were willing to ask questions, even if they didn't have the answers. And honestly, that might be what made them worth building in the first place.